Since the inception of the Internet and the progression of social media, new forms for public discussion and debate have been created. Whereas in the past, ideas of democracy and free speech were isolated and contained, digital technology allows for vast amounts of people to be connected. Modern social networking sites such as MySpace, Facebook, and YouTube are widely available, and while their intention is social networking, they can easily be used for the spread of ideas. Massive social movements in the past were all made possible by new technological innovations, such as the Gutenberg printing press, which is largely responsible for the Protestant Reformation. In the 21st century world, this revolutionary change is liberation technology in the form of social media. When a small, hardworking Tunisian street vendor named Mohamed Bouazi was subject to corrupt and unbearable harassment by police, he decided to set himself on fire as a sign of protest. In the small city of Sidi Bouzid, word quickly spread on what he had done and what his motives were, something that everyone could relate to because of the rampant government corruption. Protesters gathered in the streets, and it was not before long that the police arrived and attempted to beat them back. Although the initial protests were over the martyrdom of Mohamed Bouazi, their anger quickly turned to the government as a whole that was deeply corrupted at all levels. What seemed to be an incredibly rare and isolated outburst of public frustration and discontent was really the beginning of a revolution in not just Tunisia, but across the rest of the Arab world. Social media was used extensively to communicate and coordinate within the country and with the rest of the world.
Satellite television has made a significant influence during the Egyptian revolt. According to the U.S. Agency for International Development, 70% or more Egyptians have access to satellite television. The high volume of people with access to television made stations such as Al Jazeera even more influential. In Egypt, television provided a major opportunity for activists because of its delivery technique. Televised images are emotionally raw and inviting in a way that few other forms of media are. Despite being heavily manipulated, it gives the appearance of plausibility and spontaneity, thus making it more real and motivating to its audience. Al Jazeera was also very biased in its representation of the facts. Its opposition to Mubarak and his government has been evident long before the revolution. As a result of the news coverage, there was an increased number of Egyptians who began to document their own experiences and post them online. Most filmed events with their cell phones or created photo montages to document the violence or personal loss. In many ways, this documentation was the true transformative effect of social media. In the months following the Egyptian revolt, social media can be viewed as what made it possible for activists to find their audience. But more importantly, this is the way that social media persuaded many viewers to become activists. In other words, social media's main impact was not in expanding the audience, but in the way that it increased the numbers of participants at crucial times. Technology played a more controversial role in the Libyan uprising. Unlike previous countries, Libya had more control over public technology use. Gaddafi's regime maintained a monopoly over the internet infrastructure by blocking websites and carrying out stringent surveillance. So when the uprisings began, the Libyan authorities took a slightly different approach. Instead of initially shutting down the satellite television and internet, the Libyan government commandeered and attempted to use it as their personal broadcasting system, reaffirming Gaddafi's rightful position as their leader and threatening violence to those who did not comply. On February 15, 2011, citizens of Benghazi held peaceful protests for the removal of their leader and for the release of several political prisoners. In retaliation, the police force used water cannons and rubber bullets to disperse the gathering. Then, to discourage further protests, the Libyan authorities broadcasted a pro-government rally on state television. Throughout the constant barrage of threatening messages issued from television, activists continued to use what limited access they had to social media such as Facebook to broadcast their struggles internationally in hopes of inspiring foreign support and to connect with activists on the outside. Realizing what was going on, Gaddafi issued a total internet shutdown on March 4, 2011. This, however, did little to quell the growing uprising, as by the time news of the Libyan revolt had gone global. With constant coverage from external news sources, the external military support of NATO, the Libyan rebels managed to kill Gaddafi and end his regime in October 2011.
In China, the situation is completely different, as the government is in far more control of its population than any Islamic Middle Eastern country. When the Middle East was in revolt, all people in China could do was watch the small amounts of news that managed to get past the censorship. Within China, there is an incredibly extensive police network on the internet that constantly prowls and filters out harmful content. Even with the strict monitoring system on Twitter, anti-government comments and ideas are able to circulate because of the sheer mass of daily tweets. Charter 08 was released online detailing the free speech rights that were needed immediately in China. The document circulated quickly over the internet, and it collected thousands of signatures from all social classes and backgrounds. It was this wide-ranging reach that terrified the government into removing it immediately from the common areas of the internet. However, with a generation that grew up using digital technology and social media, it is impossible to keep them from discussing the government's tyranny by subtler means. The events that occurred in the Middle East since Mohammed Bouazizi's self-immolation on December 16th were a gradual result of the increasing use of social media within society. Western ideas of freedom and democracy slowly made its way into a younger generation that felt contained and restricted. Once there was a catalyst or a martyr, there was an unstoppable mobilization of Tunisia, Egypt, and Libya that would continue protesting until the regime stepped down. China has a long way to go before people can openly protest en masse against what they see as an unjust government. The Arab Spring and the freedom movement in China have been enabled by the significant progress in the way that information has become widely available.